Hello to the UK. It's always so sweet to be with my European brothers and sisters and my Canadian brothers and sisters. Thank you. I'm really excited about today's webinar. Thanks for being with me, everyone. I'm really happy to be here, and we're going to start the webinar now. Of course, with a little prayer of gratitude to start it off. Thank you, Ma. Thank you to the source of creation, the being of all, totality, for being this live webinar. And thank you for being all the beings of creation, all the forms and structures and life flows and life force and processes of creation. Oh, thank you for flowing through the webinars as the force that propels cosmic evolution through this particular format of expression. Thank you to the ancestors. And when I say thank you to the ancestors, I'm really, really bowing down to the most physical expression of ourselves too, right? Because the ancestors are responsible for the fact that we're living in these magnificent human forms. So to honor the very relative aspect of self, we go from the more absolute to the very relative. Thank you to the ancestors. Thank you to the body, all the way down to its finest material constituents, components. Thank you to all of us, the divinity, and all of this whole webinar group, and everybody who shall ever watch this webinar in the future, that together as a collective, we may work efficiently and effectively and powerfully. We can work in the highest and best possible way for everyone's interests, for the interests of the whole world, for the interests of our whole universe, for the interests of the mother of creation, the source of creation, empowering everyone in the webinar to rise to their full potential and to be able to utilize the resources present, the infinite resources present within the nature of the human existence, to create precisely and exactly those life experiences that fulfill desires to their deepest dimension. And as always, tenderest and most profound gratitude to the holy tradition, to the eternal tradition of wisdom. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we have an exciting webinar today. It's about fulfilling desires by unifying or looking at coordinating the relationship between individual and collective. And of course, I'll start with a little recap of yesterday. And we also have a couple of awesome questions that came in, so thank you for those. I will address those. But yeah, recap from yesterday. I was realizing that when I thought about this webinar, the principle is that when individual intention is united with universal intention, then whatever desire comes forth. And the fun of being human is we don't always know what we're going to want before we want it, right? Because the whole thing about human life is that we come in with that washing away of the omniscience that we experience in the spirit world. And so it's like coming in with amnesia a little bit. A friend yesterday sent a little excerpt from a book, and the lady in the book uses the word amnesia, but that the idea is that we come in ready to enjoy some surprises, ready to learn. You don't need to learn anything if you're already omniscient, right? So ready to have some experiences that are based on not having complete comprehension, not having total memory recall, and getting to recreate, go through the creation process again in like smaller measures in smaller moment by moment measures or periods of our life or whatever, so that we get to re-experience the whole creation process over and over again. And I realized that we can look at our relationship to wholeness. In yesterday's talk, we looked at it at its really most sort of the broadest possible spectrum through the experience of self. You know, individual self united with universal self, and everything coming together as a integrated whole. But I thought today it would be good to look at some of the areas of universality that we work with as individuals, because one of the values of being human is we get this opportunity to break down the process and look at it with great detail. And as lovely as it is to be omniscient and to have a body of pure light, which is the way we live when we're not in the human form, it's the joy of being human is getting to see compartments also, and to see separations between elements and how they enjoy the relationships of how they interact with each other. And that's why a lot of being human is also about relationships. So in the relationship of all of us in this session, I'm going to start being careful not to do too much chit chat and get right into the healing work. I'm going to start by just looking into the group. And what I'm doing is I'm checking in with the beautiful hearts of everyone in the group and into the area that we mostly worked with yesterday. This is still part of the recap, is a lot of work was done in the causal through emotional and mental areas. We did a lot of work with these areas because this is the area of self where we filter, omniscience and omnipotence and all those qualities of wholeness reside in the field of pure being. But then these subtle levels of self act like a kind of a filter for all that wholeness. And so what we get up here at the superficial level of being is we see things in linear fashion and compartmentalized, etc. So we worked with this filtering area to see if we can to open up and clear up the flow of consciousness and being in that area. In order for the relative level of self to become more pliable. And so I have Mount Shasta behind me, and mountains seem pretty solid, don't they? There's an amazing video on YouTube of Mount St. Helens erupting. And it's big, like this Mount Shasta, and like half the mountain melts before the eruption. It's an amazing video. I watched it several times. I watched it several times after we got back from our trip, because we were traveling all around. This is a picture I took, and we're traveling all around these areas, and we saw how Earth creates. And I saw how pliable Earth is. I mean, we climbed on this mountain, and boy, it was big and solid and quite a workout we didn't even get up to the top. You can imagine it's a 2-day trek. But then watching Mount St. Helens literally melt like a pile of sand, and then the explosions came out. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And what it did was it illustrated the power of fire, because we have these 5 elements. And fire is the transformer element. It moves. It can move a great big huge mass of stone like that. It just melts it like it's nothing. It was amazing. If we can, I'll put that. It's like a 3-second clip. I mean, it happened fast too. So if we can include that to my team. We can include that little amazing clip in our follow-up letters. Anyway, looking into the physiologies again. And what I'm feeling is this beautiful, in this filtering area, and we're all the feeling. It goes from infinite field of all feelings and all possible virtual experiences up to kind of identifiable experiences here. This is the emotional body where we experience our emotions, and there's the mental body on which we produce thoughts and expressions based on what we're feeling. So in this area, this filtering section, There's such a sweet, intimate, sincere, genuine desire to structure that part of the physiology so that it functions at maximum capacity, so that it is as holy and pure and capable of allowing the pure potential of the individual to move through to the surface in the highest and best possible way. And when I say that, I need to define it a little bit more concisely, because those words have been used a lot, and sometimes the words become like they become sort of like cryptic descriptions of something that is really a life experience that needs to be understood from the level of experience. But I want to try to describe this to you because I didn't describe it yesterday, and I think it's important for our webinar today. It's important for all the different aspects of your life that you wish to evolve and develop and expand and blossom, to be lived, to be lived. There are these moments in life that are like classic or archetypal moments. We've all had them. We've all had these moments when it's like we were at the right place. I'm trying to describe it. We were at the right place at the right time. You know, we've all had moments where it feels as if all the magic and mystery and beauty and exquisiteness of the universe is visited upon us all at once. And if some of you think, well, I'm not sure I ever had that experience, it's okay. Don't worry. One of the points that came up from yesterday, kind of still half in the recap here, was that children experience it a lot. It's a very kind of spontaneous state for children to just be in like a flow of being, like being in the zone, for example, or just being in a level of attunement with nature, and that it's like everything is very beautiful. And the point from yesterday that came up, and this is partly working off of a dear friend who is in, I think, yesterday's webinar, and he might be here today, offered me some pages, some recap from a book on near-death experience. And the point that the lady makes in the near-death experience book, let's see, her name was Denise. I'll have to send it to you. Anyway, the point that she makes in the book is that the reason that a soul incarnates is often very, very simple. That we incarnate, the actual being in the physiology assures you that you are doing what you are here to do. Whatever you do over and above that with regards to decisions that you make and circumstances that come up in your life, all that is frosting on the cake. That often the reason that a person comes into existence is for some event that occurs in their life that happens so spontaneously and so innocently and so automatically that it's really, really taken care of by nature. And then all the things that we work for and strive for and try for, all that is extra stuff that we're doing kind of in and around the important work of why we're here. That is a byproduct of simply being in the human physiology. So with regards to making good decisions, or whether we're successful or failing, and this ties into one of the great questions that came in today. Such a beautiful question, beautifully written. I will read it for you. I love you and thank you to you and the group for this precious time together. Was the first word. So beautiful. Can we please do healing around disempowerment, which is seemingly created through trying to fulfill desires over the decades and failing drastically, leaving those of us in that situation with the feeling that we really have no power in the creative process at all, and that change is a constant uphill battle rather than a beautiful process of co-creation with the universe. Thank you for this healing and love. Yeah, so the point that came out yesterday, there was a lot of healings around this too, was that there's a tendency every time we move forward to be the moving forward process activates dopaminergic flush through the orbital frontal cortex. And so we get that feeling of, oh, I did something, it worked, woohoo! So that little feeling happens. But with a lot of us, and I am included in this, I only discovered it while I was on the trip, that every time I've stepped forward in what I feel is my progress forward in this life, I've always been somewhat releasing, letting go of my past to the point of rejection. And what I realized is when we're working with from an individual level to fulfill desires and we want support from the whole universe, that includes everything we've ever been. So I don't know how many of you have had that experience of talking with a friend or saying yourself, oh yeah, that me in the past, that was like another lifetime. That was so far back there. Well, actually, yeah, right? Right? That's like, I'm never going back to that again. And it's true. We'll never go backwards. Once a person has learned what a pleasure it is to have, like a good, healthy routine, who would ever want to get off of a good, healthy routine? On the one hand. On the other hand, what we were in the past is still with us now. So that sense of that I kind of don't like who I was, because I found out I was carrying that. I kind of didn't like who I was, and I was very happy to let go of what I've been in the past in order to embrace who and what I am coming into the future. But what I realized is that all of it's me, all of it's the self. And just as little children have this amazing kind of attunement with natural law, and they have blessings, they're protected. A lot of times children are kind of protected, and they have that experience of being like beautiful children. All children are beautiful, all children without exception, all people are beautiful. But there's something lovely about that kind of innocent freshness of the physiology when it's little, but not ripened nervous system enough to even really appreciate that condition. So each phase of life's existence and manifestation is a phase of divine interaction. So each one is precious and each one has something special to offer into this moment. So what we did was we went back, and so recapping for everybody and redoing that healing, another layer of it for everyone who watched yesterday is watching today, and for everyone who's here today who wasn't yesterday, we get that fullness of yesterday plus today's on this. But we're going back into each moment of moving forward on the path of evolution, and in that spot where we let go of what we have been, bringing in the quality of integration. So it's not that we reject and let go and eliminate what we've been. It's that it becomes integrated, it's embraced, it adds fullness, the new condition and state of now I can play a musical instrument, or now I can drive a car, or whatever it is. Each time we take a new step forward, that becomes enhanced by what we've been. It's not a rejection of it. And we can all look back and we can say, oh, I went through this awful phase in my life where I wasn't happy, or I went through this awful phase in my life where I smoked cigarettes, or, whatever those awful phases were. In and around what we identify as the awful part, there was still divine being having a human experience. So that is the value that gets integrated. So we get the power of divinity coupled with the present situation and the present capability to desire and think and act effectively and successfully. Because if there's a part of me back there that I look back, like for me, my teenage years were really pretty tough. And I look back in my teenage years, I'm like, ugh, me as a teenager, ugh. I don't even want to think about it. Ugh, it was all, like that. What does that do to me as a teenager? And me as a teenager is still here. So, so it's this loving embrace of integration, loving embrace. And what the fire element does is it moves in and it transforms in that area. And it does it for the physiology. I may look back at my teenage self and go, ugh, me as a teenager. But you know what? There were things about being a teenager that were splendid. So it doesn't hurt to integrate those yummy parts, the beautiful parts. And the bits, like, I know now as a fully ripened nervous system that I'm not going to go back and smoke a cigarette. So I don't have to worry about that part of it. We don't have to worry about the parts that we don't like. What we're doing is we're integrating all the being. We integrate the being aspect. So there, and I just want to feel that moving through for everybody and all the layers of self, more or less for the physical body. I'm seeing it happening at a physical level, etheric level of self. It's clearing habits in the mental and emotional levels of physiology, particularly subconscious and unconscious levels of the mind, where we have these little vicious cycle habits of, oh, me as a teenager, ugh, no. So just it like undoes those, it unravels those, it unravels them. I'm also seeing influx of a kind of an activation or liveliness in the etheric physiology, which is kind of the body of prana, the body of the energy body of the self. And that is there's a great purifying potential in the etheric body, because it looks so much like the physical body, and yet it's made of just pure energy. It's able to move out the imbalances that are stuck physically. So it moves out if there's, for example, a little buildup of some physical toxin in the brain, for instance. And I'm seeing with some people, there's some up in the head area. Sometimes there can be some like neurochemicals, especially if we worry, if there's a lot of worry, or so it gets into the brain. And then what happens is the etheric body, made of energy, material, can move to release those toxins. And that as that happens, it works the way beautiful great canyons are formed. And that's also a little bit, we went into detail about that yesterday, was the formation of the canyons. There's the blood and the ventricle fluid in the body are able to function more efficiently when there's a little bit of warmth with them. So, and what we did yesterday was we took that fire, which is the transformative energy of being, and the healing refined it and refined it and refined it to its finest level. And when it's refined to its finest level, it ultimately becomes love. It becomes love. Fire becomes love. Love is quite the transformer, isn't it? It transforms life, I would say, more dramatically and more profoundly, and sustains life more dramatically and more profoundly than any other emotion. We can say, well, negative emotions, war, and then life is all changed. But look, love manages to carry humanity even through war situations to new generations. It's a huge power. It's a huge power in the universe too, and it's experienced by all levels of beings, all levels. One of the reasons I've got Mount Shasta up here is because the celestial body and the pranic body of this being is all this life force. It goes all the way through from Mount Shasta, from its celestial level of self up to the etheric level of self. You can the devas, or the refined intelligences of creation, are very highly integrated and massive quantities. We could see it from hundreds of miles away. The radiance of light from this structure moves through the whole environment. It's powerful and extremely rejuvenating, rebirthing. And what it's doing for our physiologies today is it's rebirthing these physiologies, rebirthing our comprehension of the 5 elements as they exist in the physiology. Because successfully manifesting desires in the relative means creating a kind of a pliable flow of energy from these deeper levels of the self. These are where the desires rise up. Even from being, we can say divine being has a desire to experience life as human, and to let us have our own desires and to create that surprise effect. And then it has to interface with the physical material level of creation in order for the desire to be fulfilled. So what we're doing is clearing impressions for the person who asked this question, and for all of us, clearing impressions. And it looks like in the prefrontal cortex, there's some clearing going on up around those, that occipital frontal cortex area as well, which is part of the prefrontal cortex. We're clearing habits. There's a habit of slight recoiling from the dopaminergic flush. And I feel that habit of recoiling goes back to early childhood. And I know it's common for a lot of people in the group that when kids are little, they don't have filters, right? They're hilarious because of that. When they're happy, they're so happy. When they're sad, they're so sad. When they're hot, they're really, when they're, hungry, they're so hungry. It's like that, no filters. So what happens is when the child experiences that level of deep prophetic attunement with nature, when the child is is glowing in its highest level. I remember my oldest son, my first child. He was about, I think, like maybe a year old, around 12 months or something. One morning, and we were running a TM center, and I had dressed him up in this cute little outfit. And I'm telling you, the child glowed. He just glowed. He was so in himself, and he was so happy. And it was a quiet, stable, self-contained happiness in him. He wasn't letting it out, filters everywhere. He was glorious. And I brought him down to the potluck dinner, and no one could take eyes off of this being, this beaming, radiant being that was this big. It was just the most luscious thing. And so that level of experience, that's the level of experience that we're recreating in ourselves. It's not so much how the actual events come out. How did the dinner come out? Nobody even remembers, but everyone remembers the radiance of that being, because I'm sure the dinner came out fine. but the radiance of that being and the capability of that being to perfectly, exquisitely express divinity. It wasn't what he did. It wasn't that he had successful action necessarily. He probably did manage to eat, but that wasn't the reason. The reason was that level of radiance. And so that was beaming through the physical material level of self. And so that's what's really opening up. This rearrangement in the filtering levels of the physiology is to allow the radiance of being to work its way up into the physical material level, so that the physical becomes more pliable, more malleable, more workable, more responsive to desires, more responsive. So this is what's moving through this area. We can say this is the sankalp for the healing, is to increase pliability at the relative level of creation, so that the relative level of creation is able to effortlessly reflect the universal reality and cosmic evolution in divine intention in such a way as to support desires fulfilled, fulfillment of desires. And one of the energies that's coming forth, and it's interesting because this is an energy that I met on this particular mountain, is the passion that we experience before birth, right? Because before we take the human form, we have this knowledge that we're going to do this great, exciting thing, which is to become a human. And at that time, all the challenges that we're going to face are planned out. All the karma that we're going to carry is planned out. All this, what we often experience when we're in the life as difficulties, are planned out ahead of time in the spirit world. And in the spirit world, when we plan them out, it's crazy exciting. It's like, oh, I'm going to have a completely dysfunctional mom. Oh, cool. I mean, I didn't. I had a nice mom, but you know what I'm saying? Oh, or I'm going to, I'm going to get really sick when I'm in my 20s. All right, man, that's going to like really power me forward in my evolution. So at that time, there's this feeling of excitement about the whole thing. The thing is that quality of excitement is founded on a sense of stability, that I am so intimately integrated with the being, my individuality. Individuality and being are so integrated as one thing that even if I get horribly sick when I'm in my 20s, it's going to be amazing, because I'm going to come through that with like gangbusters. I'm going to barrel through that with such amazingness, and it's going to support an experience for me as an individual and me as a wholeness and totality of creation, of how this process is recreated to fulfill cosmic needs and individual needs at the same time, that it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be something that I will always, memory of which I will always cherish, and I will treasure, and I will never forget what I learned from that experience. And that gets us back to the element of learning. And that you can't learn when you're a being of light and everything is light, and your every single tiny, tiny little impulse of self is instantly manifested. What's to learn? So we're here, we get to learn, we get to have surprises, and we get to surprise the creation, because we all come in with a purpose that's very simple and set, and it's going to happen no matter what. And so everything else we do is like, it's an exciting surprise for the universe. So that passionate energy, looking at it from the level of the gap here, and I'm just watching how it's affecting and influencing the subtler levels of the physiology, the subtle sheaths of the body, and how when that energy is present, it washes, it's undoing the habits in the brain of falling back into, oh, I had this amazing achievement. All right. Oh no, I have to kind of like, it's not okay. There's something, I can find something bad in that achievement. Or I can't, all right, but I can't really show that I'm so happy about it. There's like that pulling back energy that's there. And even the pulling back is part of the learning process, and it's part of the brilliance of who you are, of learning to, the pulling back comes, that experience of being raised in a family where you're allowed to, you're encouraged to be successful and move forward. But if you do, you're told that, no, you can't get too excited about it, and you can't really celebrate yourself. You have to, you have to be humble, and you can't. My daughter's little friend was over yesterday, and oh, what a beautiful girl, and what amazing. She has curls like mine, but they're totally all ringlets. They're just amazing. And I said, I love your hair. It's so beautiful. And she said, oh, I hate my hair. I'm like, you hate your hair? Look at you. You're 16. How can you hate anything about yourself, right? So, but we know that that's the way people are cultivated. That's the way we're raised. That's the way we're raised. And that's why the ancestors also get to receive this healing and this ability to accept that cultivation was there. This is what we're finding is the good in it. The cultivation was there so that we learn to not be so overshadowed by the success and the accomplishment and the celebration of self, but we learn to harness the bliss. Harness it. It's part of a refining process, and it's been going on in our culture and our society for generation upon generation upon generation. People are not allowed to feel like, Yay me! They're just not allowed to do it. It's always brought down. So this, I feel, is part of the disempowering. This is what causes the disempowerment, is that experience of yay me keeps getting brought down. And it's done because we want to control. Then why then suicides happen when they came to experience this life? Oh, what a sweet, sweet question. And thank you. It's so timely too. Even that, thank you for the question. This is from Croatia. Thank you for the question. Why suicides happen when they came to experience this life? They also came to experience the depths of their own despair. And I can tell you that the individual feels that they're alone dealing with their despair. And they feel that they don't they don't have the support, that they can't ask for support. You know, it's the ones who ask for support who often avoid the suicide scenario, but it's the ones who don't ask for support, who think, I have this horrible feeling inside me. It's destroying me. We talked a lot more about suicide in the last webinar, so you might want to check out those links. But please make a note to send links to this lady from last webinar. But a person wants to deal with it themselves. They feel that it's come up from inside themselves, that the despair and the depression are their own making. They made it themselves, and that they had better deal with it themselves. So what happens is they try to deal, the despair and the depression sit very, very deep in the physiology. So it's very abstract, it's very spread out, it's huge. And they try to deal with it from up here, like the mental body. They're like, well, I'm gonna get rid of it. Somehow I'm gonna think my way around it. I'm gonna work my way around it. I'm gonna cheer myself up. I'm gonna somehow get past this thing. But when we're up here in the denser level of the being, we're, in a sense, we're coming at it from a smaller position, a more isolated, a more constrained position, to this big abstract heavy duty thing that wedges itself in that gap between our own divinity and our individuality. It wedges itself right in there. And so it's huge when it comes to the point that a person's dealing with it. When the problem is addressed from the underneath, when we let being come up and address the problem, being is always bigger. And being is not inclined to address the desire to eliminate oneself with the desire to eliminate it. One of the things is, when we address it from the top, the desire is, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to destroy it. Well, if you're trying to put I'm going to kill energy into something that's already I'm going to kill, it makes I'm going to kill stronger. So it doesn't, it disassociates the ability to successfully handle that situation. So what we do is we come at it from the underneath. We come at it from the level of allowing awareness to take the problem, that algorithm, drop it into the field of being. Being then addresses the despair and the self-hatred and the depression. And instead of addressing it with, I'm going to kill this thing, I'm going to destroy it, it addresses it with integration and love, and it integrates it. It integrates it. And what I see it doing is, for those, we have people who's toy with that idea sometimes. So what happens is, being is very delicate. When consciousness first moves up from this fine level of creation up across the gap into the dense level of creation, it moves almost without moving, right? It's like the pathless path. The movement is so fine and it's so non-manifest that it can move anywhere. It can move without moving into the field where the depression is. And it creates veins of integration and connection, acknowledgement, adoration, self-adoration. And it literally transforms the life force of the desire for the suicide. It transforms it into a desire, into a whole, it brings it back to wholeness. It brings it back to that complete sense of connection to being. And that impulse to destroy the life is always connected with a feeling of being separate from being. Always. I know. I know. Whatever the individual accomplished in their life, even their leaving is part of that story. For those who have already left, for those who've already left us, it's not a wasted life. Still, the life has value. And on some level, they accomplished what they needed to accomplish. And on some level, being wanted to experience that. So you have to bless them. All the situations are different. Thank you for the question. I hope that helped. I hope that answered it sufficiently. If it didn't, ask me again more concisely. While we're at this, let's go to another question. Oh, yeah, this is a great question. So here is a question also about Croatia. Another Croatia question. Can we fit in the topic of this webinar some healing for the very hot weather in Croatia, reaching 42 degrees Kelvin, or Celsius, I guess, Celsius, 42 degrees Celsius, when 25 to 28 degrees would be normal, causing fire in forests, and also many regions of Europe are under the strong heat wave coming from Africa. Since you mentioned that all 5 elements will be more elaborated today, then even with this gross aspect, cries for attention. Beautiful. And she mentions her brother also is really suffering from the heat, and heat in his physiology. So all of us in America, many of us in America, of European descent or of mixed breed, owe infinite gratitude to the people of Europe, because all our culture, all of our Western culture evolved, it spawned from European culture. So Europe is our foundation. So what I'm feeling is the rains come when the yagya is successful. And each of us is performing a yagya with every breath. And when I say yagya, for those of you who aren't familiar with that word, it means an action which fulfills the dictates of natural law without incurring karma. And yagya is a Vedic term that refers to certain kinds of sacrifices where priests gather around a sacrificial fire and they offer ghee and fruits and flowers and different things into the fire. So it can be seen, yagya can be referred to in that sense. But yagya is also life, because a human life is a yagya. And human experience, this webinar is a yagya. We are in it, and every breath counts. So what I'm experiencing is, and this was part of yesterday too, is that there's a tendency to look at the challenging situation and working with the spiritual capabilities, the energy healing capabilities, work it just from the level of energy. Now, this is beautiful, but what we have to understand, the reason that today's session is working with an integration of these more filtering areas with the more denser levels of the physiology is because it's at the dense level that the results are found. And when the individuals as a collective are more frustrated but running from the solution rather than working themselves toward the solution, then this counteracts the effect of the yagya. The yagya is establishing it from the finest level and then following it through to the densest level. And what I'm seeing is, as a collective, that I know Europe has been under a really hard time. In America, our hearts go out to the European nations because we know that you are taking on the weight of the discord that has held down the Middle Eastern part or the Levant area of our earth. And it's a very heavy thing. The whole earth is rising up in the field of consciousness. Consciousness is rising all over the world. And what happens is, in the areas where people are suffering the most, then this is where the most dramatic changes take place. And Europe is carrying that. Europe's carrying a lot for the Levant. We know this. We read the news a little. And I feel that the frustration of that situation, because it hasn't really resolved, but instead it's evolving into situations with terrorism, that it's not a situation that people feel comfortable, and not a single individual feels safe or capable of dealing with it. It is a situation that absolutely, literally has to be evolved collectively. And from the collective perspective, the organization to do so from the inside out, like a yagya, right? Doing it on the level of consciousness and then bringing it up to the surface, is the structure hasn't been organized sufficiently, except for Maharishi yagyas. And God bless you. God bless you, Europe, for doing those. So what we do now in our collective is I'm just offering the whole thing to divine being. The fire is there, the heat is there because there's a longing for transformation. Space is present within all the elements, always. It's the finest. So space is in air, and air and space are in fire, and air, space, and fire are in water. Air, space, fire are in earth. What I'm feeling is we're drawing on information from an archive. There's Earth Archive offered from deep within the earth, from the intelligence. There's a level of being intelligent deep within the earth that's responsible for all sorts of movements and structures and weather patterns on earth. So what we're doing is this group, our beautiful group with your amazingly beautiful integrated heart chakras, is interfacing with the Devic level of earth, and then also the ancient ones that are deep within the earth. The ancient ones are providing access to archives that have to do with records of Earth's weather patterns over the entire time that Earth has lived, that Earth has been a planet. And that's working. This information, I hold this because it actually, some of the information is right here. Look at that amazing thing. This is part of an archive. We were lucky. We went to a place where the fire, the intelligence from deep within the earth, rose up, and every single hole, every single space in this amazing rock is a piece of information. It's all wisdom and knowledge contained, encoded in the language of form. And look how it bent that solid earth energy around it like nothing. Like nothing. And there are fields, there are miles and miles. There's miles of this stuff. I'll post some pictures. It's an amazing place. And every single hole is a story. It's like a symphony. Every single little hole and little crevice in this rock tells a story. All this is the information that's coming in, and it's the Davic level of intelligence of the earth knows how to read this information. That's actually why this came up. It's not an archive that humans use, it's an archive that devas use. It's an amazing place. Northern California lava beds. So the devas, they have access to the information, but it's because we know and recognize that that information is there, and we honor it as a real thing. Even though for us it's a very abstract thing, it's okay. The fact that we recognize and honor it supports what we're doing is we're giving support from the material level of creation into those subtler materials. We're giving support from the earth level and the water level and our earthy bodies made of the 5 elements into the finer sheaths of being are that which the devas are made. And so they can thank you. It requires a give and take. It requires all 3 levels of intelligence. Like Rishi, Devata, and Chandas, it requires us fleshy beings on the earth with the devas in the middle and the Rishi value, the ancient ones in the mantle, working together. So here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a rerouting of air patterns and water patterns. And what's happening is a very small move on the inside of the earth. And this, I'm just reading this as it comes up, guys, so I don't even know how the sentence is going to end. So anyway, a small move from inside the earth of the water patterns results in shifts in the atmospheric patterns on the surface of the earth. There are a lot of different ways that the elements inside Earth's crust can reconfigure themselves in order to support a release of the heat. Looks like there's some information being brought in from cosmic sources as well. Oh, got it. So there's an energy. We have something to contribute here. There is an energy. It's like an energy medicine. I discovered it years ago, like a decade ago. I discovered that it is colder than the coldest of all the cold. It's really cold. And it resides out in deep, deep space. And it's so concentrated that it usually has to be diluted with subtle energies here in this realm. So often if it's used in the physiology and it's used for those who are physically suffering from heat, and it's going into the etheric level of the physiology, and it's also going into the etheric level of Mother Earth. And it's being mixed. Is it being mixed at all? In the etheric level of Mother Earth, the fine beings who are responsible for, air flows and the water cycles and the way the magma moves up from the inside of the earth and all that, is they're working with it. What I'm seeing is a relationship between our group and the soul of Mother Earth. And we're offering the cognition of this cold material. And we're also offering the softness of our own energy medicines. Soma. It wants to mix with Soma. A sweet byproduct of the essence of the soul inhabiting the body. That's all. Just the fact that we exist is enough. And it's like a tender offering laid at the feet of Mother Earth. In her, with so much love, I feel so much love. The beautiful hearts in this group are just, it's organized. The love is organized and efficient. And it's something that penetrates even into those areas where love sometimes can't penetrate. It's not a coincidence that the question about suicide came up. It is the same way that the love of the mother of the universe and the wholeness of creation penetrates the heart of a person who doesn't love themselves, who's contemplating self-destruction. In the same way, in that same beautifully organized, very subtle, very delicate level of our beings, this sweet offering of our energy, knowledge of the energy medicine. And then the devas know how to expand it and to apply it and to bring it into the atmosphere and bring it into the earth so that the weather patterns change and cool off Europe and cool off the US too. We're also having a heat wave. It's interesting, Fairfield, it's raining in lots of parts of the Midwest, but Fairfield is in the drought. And the grasses and the trees and all the plants are suffering. So, and I'm just feeling how beautiful this is. And it's soft and it feels like a bed. It feels like a little, like a depression, like a, I don't mean depression like being depressed. It feels like a little impression, like a little circular bowl, like a bowl. It feels like it's being offered like a bowl. Our collective, it has formed a kind of severe wildfires in BC also, yeah. So all over, beautiful. Thank you for adding that. What's being offered is our reverence, our respect, the fact that we honor the intelligence of Earth, which is responsible for really controlling everything from wildfires to droughts to heat waves and their antidotes to those. Our respect and thank you. Okay, so here's what's happening. I'm seeing now the Devic intelligence of Earth is rising to our, it's like we let out a call and we made an offering, like a yagya. Instead of putting ghee in the fire, we put our light medicines in the fire, right? We put our light medicines into that heat spot. And this Devic intelligence of Earth is rising up with integration. So what's happening is it's fulfilling the objective of the webinar as well, that each of us has a level of greatness within us, which is vast. I had the huge privilege and joy, and she may even be on the webinar, I don't have my list right here, of speaking with a dear friend of mine who I consider to be one of the great transformers of our earth, a woman whose greatness is humbly expressed in every act, in every breath, in every moment, in everything she does. And that exchange with this beautiful, dear, incredible friend led me to realize and to recognize the part of each of us which has the capability, like a mother of the whole earth, and this more healing was done on this yesterday, to be able to embrace everyone, to embrace the whole earth. Any one of us can do a single act that has an influence that affects the whole earth. And it requires, and this was part of yesterday's healing, but we'll do another layer of it now, it requires the capability to expand out the sense of self-ability to integrate opposites. That's why we did the healing earlier, to integrate ourself at all times in our life of flow. Because there are times when we were extreme on one side or extreme on the other side, and the whole thing has to come together as a wholeness. Then we are able to act in each moment to support the well-being of literally everyone. Literally everyone. And I'm feeling the energy shifting. Good job, everyone. And I'm looking for that spot, like where is that part? Where is that in the filtering system? And I realize that one of the things about the filtering system is that as creative intelligence, as being moves from the finer levels up to the denser levels, what it's doing is it's discriminating and it's pushing stuff out. So we come out to the mental level where we're thinking one thought at a time, right? Out of an infinite universe of possible thoughts we could think, we come up to one. So the thing is that at the same time that one is thinking one thought, the one thought can be it can be the impulse to embrace all the opposites of all the people in all the places. And I'm just feeling it, and I'm feeling it. The devas, the great beings and the eternal ones, the ancient ones. One piece of information that I'm reading directly through from the archives is that they're saying that it's long been known that the earth would come to this level of crisis, and it's come to other levels of crisis in the past anyway. The earth always renews itself. The softness of the joy. I see questions coming in, so I want to open up for these. The confidence. Oh, the confidence that comes when we plan to come in here in the human life. And we know that whatever we do, we will fulfill our life's desire. Very often the life desire, the desire for divinity to create a life, is something that's we hardly notice it because we do it so spontaneously and so automatically. All right. So there was a big energy shift there with the relationship. There's been an integration between the relative us in our physical bodies on the surface with the Davic and the ancient level of Earth's intelligence. And so now channels of communication are open that weren't previously open. God bless you all for being that, for us as a group being big enough that we can create that effect in a way that would actually create then a response from the Davic and deep inside level of Earth to be able to make the changes that will support a shift. Just to finish up that last thought before I get to these questions, is that there have been crises on Earth before, but Earth knows absolutely how to balance herself out, and she can do this. She will do this. But we have to be deserving enough that the change will happen gracefully and gently and not wipe out the entire human race. So that is what we have to focus on. That was the message. I was getting a message from the ancient ones. So our job is to live our lives in such a way that we're deserving of going through the transformation. Earth will right herself. Earth will balance herself, but to do it in such a way that we survive. And I just know we're going to do that. I feel like it's already done. In this group, we've already done it. We've already done it. And now to be those radiant beings, radiant beams of self to every part of our creation so that everyone can pick up on that sweet position. I would like to, raise pure consciousness. Heck yeah, that's what we're doing. We got to do it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, great beings. So I want to let you guys know what's going on. One lady from Louisiana says, please tell the lady from Croatia, thank you for the question. So see, your question was really important. And you two, I hope you two get to meet someday. But if you don't, know that even asking that one question made a difference in somebody's life. That's huge. And then she meant the one regarding suicide. Okay. And then here's another question. Yes, and thank you for that question. My province is on fire. Smoke is so thick. Wow. And then there's another one here. There were lots of wildfires and heat in Central California recently, too. Maybe raining in some parts now. Sister's house was saved from fires on about every side a couple of weeks ago. I think rain sticks from South America may help too. Oh, rain sticks. Oh, okay. So that's cool. I'm familiar with them, but I didn't realize that using them helps, but that would make sense. Anybody who's not familiar with rain sticks, you can Google that because they're cool. We have one somewhere, or maybe we gave it away. I can't remember when we moved. Yeah, when we drove west to Mount Shasta, we covered about 5,000 miles. And pretty much all the states that we drove through were on fire. We drove through tremendous smoke. And I took some pictures because it created some interesting effects with the sun. But all right. So good job, everybody. We have 10 minutes. So if there are any questions, you can pop them forward to me now, and I've got some time to answer questions. Otherwise, what I'm doing is going back into the group and looking to see what more we can do, how we can bring the refinement that's taking place in the filtering part of the physiology up to the dense level of physiology. And all 5 of the elements are up here at the dense level. So the Rio lead appears, let's see, the Rio lead opens with Agni fire. Okay, so my dear who just sent me this chat message, the Rio lead, oh, the Rig Vade. Oh, okay, thank you. It was a misprint. I was confused. So the Rig Vade opens with Agni. Right. Yes. Because as I was mentioning yesterday's webinar, it's of the 5 elements, it's kind of like in the middle, just like the heart chakra is like in the middle of all the chakras. So yesterday there was this big healing for the heart chakra and its auric field. And I asked at that time, being, because I was confused, why isn't this same kind of healing that's happening for the heart chakra, why isn't it happening for the other chakras? And the answer that came back was because it's in the center, it touches the others. And what I'm seeing happening with those elements, and I'm opening for the next question too, what I'm seeing happening with those elements is an energy flow. It looks like a fractal structure is being created in the physiology with regards to the relationship between all 5 elements in the physiology. That it's like a matrix, but it's not exactly a matrix. It's not at all static. It's moving. It's more like a function, but it's taking on, it's almost like a mix between a matrix and a function, which is very, very orderly with sacred geometrical elements to it. So there's a structure that's presenting itself as a tool for energy healing for everybody in this group. And it's comprised of figure 8 forms, but it's like a fractal type of a structure. So there's a big aspect of it that's flowing from, if we put space here, it flows from space through fire up to the earth element and then back through, I should do it this way, from space through fire up to earth and then back through fire and then back to space. But there are also small ones that are running between all the elements, from space to air, from space to fire, from space to water, from space to earth, and then from air to fire and air to like that, and then from fire to water and fire to earth, and then from earth. So between all of them, so it's creating a kind of a big grid-like form. And this infinity flow energy structure is again extremely gentle. I'm feeling it quieting and becoming softer and more delicate and more soft and more delicate until it's come almost to a stasis. And from the stasis point, I'm feeling a release of a lot of discord. Lots of discordant feelings and regret and doubt and fear. And this discord that I'm feeling releasing, our physiologies are kind of like the blueprint for it. But it's really releasing from the collective consciousness, the whole collective consciousness of all humanity. It's sitting in the morphic field of humanity. I gave a definition for morphic fields yesterday, and we talked about them a bit. There's a lot of doubt releasing. Okay, so I'm just feeling all that density clearing. And what it's doing is, as I mentioned before, it's going to take a collective effort. On our part, as humans, we get to participate in the excitement of the Earth transformation taking place right now, because we can blame ourselves all we want for the fact that the Earth is getting hotter. And I'm sure we have good reason to do that. But at the same time, there's a level of the profound and very delicate, passionate excitement of being human can move through to the dense level of the tissues and the elements that are in the physiology. This matrix that's in the dense level of physiology is supporting an ability to pull that finest value of the fire, that Agni that was at the beginning of creation, actually is a kind of embodiment of that passionate thrill of the manifestation of the creation. And so that is what fuels intense creativity and profound integration of intelligence and creativity to come up with really viable, powerful, workable solutions. And it catapults or pushes individuals to greatness. It pushes them to manifest their full potential. And that's what this situation is about. That is happening. I'm just saying that's happening. And while that's rolling and happening, because we're getting close to our time, I want to get to the last question. Oh, look, there's a question. Okay, so this is a lady in England. Thank you for your question. Is this related to what I experienced this morning with my 9-day-old grandson? Oh, lucky you, man. She was cuddling her 9-day-old grandson. Oh, and I thought, I will do my job of protecting him energetically and physically. But then I felt, doesn't that mean that in my thinking that it puts him in a position of needing protecting? Oh, good question. I was pressing him into the opposite of it. I was the protector. He was needing protecting, but he didn't need it. I felt he was pulling a face and rejecting it from me. Oh, wow, that's so interesting. And man, they so know. They really know. Even when they're 9 days old, man, they are so clued in. I think this might be related to the integration of opposites. Sorry, don't think I'm expressing this very well. Are you kidding? That was beautiful. That was beautifully expressed. And absolutely. And look what a teacher he is already. 9 days old. Can't do much for himself, can he? And yet he can be such a teacher, such a beautiful teacher. He represents our future. What you were experiencing was not wrong. What you were experiencing was this healing that we're doing today, right now. You are getting ready for this. This is, looking at our earth and saying, well, does our earth need protection? If we feel that we're rising up to protect our earth, maybe what we're really doing is we're pulling our earth down into some state of needing to be protected. The fact is, we are in a heat wave, and that's just a fact. But it's also a fact that any element of individuals to feel like they need to be heroic because they need to do that to somehow satisfy is also a little bit of an illusion. Remember, our purpose on earth, our purpose in our lives is already satisfied. The reason you came to this world and the reason you live is going to be satisfied literally no matter what you do. No matter what you do. If you hold up in a trailer on the outskirts of town and spend the rest of your life drinking, you will still have accomplished your goal in this life. So don't think that being a hero is why we came. We're already fulfilling our goal, our destiny from a divine perspective. But we all have choices of what kind of frosting we want to put on our cake. And knowing that it's frosting, and knowing that the integration of divinity with the individuality puts everything in perspective, right? That it's really at that moment, the privilege is getting to be the instrument of the divine. It's not like, I mean, even if you're the instrument of the divine and you're the one who came up with the idea that saved the earth from global warming, you know, fabulous, and you should be celebrated. But not that it can't be a trap, right? It can't be a trap. So what we need to do is we need to integrate. We need to love up. We need to bring total loving acceptance and embracing of the part that might think that get confused between the frosting and the cake. Some of us like the frosting better. When I first came here, all the cakes were made without eggs, right? And they were hard as bricks, man. And so we'd make nice butter frosting, put on the cake, and most people would just eat the frosting because the cake was awful. Anyway, we fixed that. Yogurt was the key, the trick. Yogurt and baking soda, fluffy cakes. But in the beginning, so I'm looking for the point in the being where the junction between the cake and the frosting meet. Where do we discriminate the frosting from the cake? Where do we discriminate the frosting from the cake? And what I'm seeing is that the purpose of this healing webinar is not to separate the frosting from the cake, but to integrate the frosting in the cake. And I'm seeing that the life purpose is present in every single nuance of life experience. And so whatever frosting you choose, your life's purpose is served regardless of whether you consider the act that you performed a successful act or an unsuccessful act. The life's purpose is integrated into that. The acts that we perform and the decisions we make, that's the frosting. And the fulfillment of divinity, experiencing life as human, is the cake. And the integration supports the ability for every bite of frosting to be bliss. And for those of us who are working towards ideal weight, please forgive the food analogy. I love you. I love you. May all your frosting carry no calories. May all your frosting be the brilliant idea that solves the problem of global warming and not put on a single pound. All right, everybody. We've come to our time. Thank you for the amazing questions. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for being the coherent group that you are and being the towering spiritual heroes that you are. Literally, when I go through my list, I am astounded. Oh, beautiful. Oh, beautiful. Yes, one lady says we're cooperating, not necessarily protecting. Isn't that beautiful? No drop of love ever wasted. Oh, beautiful. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, everything back, everything, earth feeling cool and loved and adored and yeah, right? Thank you. Okay, everybody, my dearest, my precious, you guys are all so precious to me. Thank you for being in my world. We'll do this again in 3 weeks, and I look forward to sending out another healing and blog before then. And in the meantime, you have my love and my deepest respect and great appreciation for everything you're doing individually and collectively. And thank you, and thank you to the Eternal Tradition. Bye.